On behalf of the Rockland Neighborhood Association Land Use. Very good. So once again, Carolyn, you have 10 minutes.
Testing. Great. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carollyne Yardley, and I consider myself an islander. I have lived on Lekwungen territory for a lifetime. I try to be a good guest, albeit uninvited. I am here representing the Rockland Neighborhood Association Land Use Committee. We are a group of volunteers that assist the City of Victoria staff in notifying community members about proposed land use applications in Rockland to foster a stronger sense of local engagement. We are grateful to City staff who educate us on land use regulations and Council who value us as a community partner. We are not an electoral organization and support transparency in presenting at public hearings. We have been performing a listening campaign for over a year now, completed a neighborhood survey, and will provide community feedback on 3 main sections of the draft OCP, including tenant protection, built heritage, and the urban forest. Tenants make up 66% of Rockland residents. Our vulnerable seniors and low-income households are concentrated along the transit corridors and the priority growth residential areas of Fort Street and Oak Bay Avenue. Over 75% of residents in Rockland live in multi-unit buildings, and we have a relatively low number of single detached houses compared to other neighborhoods. Rockland has a long history of converting historic homes into multiplexes, subdivided into apartments that are environmentally sensitive to increasing density, while preserving the neighborhood's large tree canopy for urban forest animals. Rockland is the lungs of the city, the center of Victoria's urban forest, and is without a municipal park. The draft OCP is based on the premise that allowing developers to build market-rate housing can improve housing affordability for everyone. Policy directives that use the language of compassion and care to provide much-needed housing for those in need often only satisfy unit counts and can lead to displaced communities under the guise of renewal. Upzoning can result in dem-evictions. The theory that increasing high-quality supply will reduce low-quality prices does have known limitations. In-migration is known to end a vacancy chain locally. Therefore, we support the Victoria Tenants Union request to consider the right of first refusal and guarantees displaced tenants an opportunity to return to the new building with the same number of bedrooms at their original rent, with standard rent increases, and compensation throughout the displaced period. Unlike Burnaby and Ladysmith, Victoria's current tenant protections by comparison offer much less compensation. Rockland's multiplexes incorporate tenancy with heritage architecture and natural areas and landscapes that have aesthetic, historic, and cultural importance. They stand alongside BC tourism attractions like Government House, the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria, Langham Court Theatre, Victoria's Water Tower, and Craigdarroch Castle, as draws for tourism businesses that provide walking, running, bus, and cycling tours who rely on the neighborhood for this public amenity throughout the year. Heritage conserving infill as a use is permitted across most of the city, but would only be relevant where a building has heritage value and is considered appropriate for designation. Only a small portion of Rockland would be covered by heritage conserving area requirements. Therefore, we request the city staff assess the significance of Rockland's shared cultural heritage, built heritage, and natural geography, and engage a qualified heritage consultant to assist or lead the research confirming the suitability of coverage under the HCA requirements. Vancouver Island is located within the coastal Douglas fir bioclimatic zone, most of which is under human pressure from development, agriculture, and logging, making it the most at-risk bioclimatic zone in BC. The Quetlal food system, colonially known as the Garry Oak ecosystem, is a component of this zone, and it emerged after the glacial retreat around 10,000 years ago. According to the Canadian Forestry Service, the ecosystem is mostly contained to the Metro Victoria area in Canada. The open woodland character resulted from a millennia of Lekwungen agroecological management and is considered to be a living artifact by the Lekwungen people. In the absence of these activities, the landscape would be dominated by closed stands of Douglas fir and grand fir. While you can find relatively intact Garry Oak ecosystems in regional parks, 75% of Garry Oak trees and modified ecosystems are located on what the municipality refers to as private land. The Garry Oak tree, a long-lived keystone species, supports over 1,645 co-evolved species of plants, insects, mammals, amphibians, birds, and reptiles, and this differs from wildland species, making its preservation crucial. Garry Oak and associated ecosystems in this region have a unique local genetic adaptation that would be very difficult to introduce if lost. Trees exist on private properties in Victoria that exceed 250 years old, the marker which meets the definition of old growth for coastal forests by the province of BC, and many of those old trees continue to thrive, vibrating with the rich cultural history of Lekwungen territory. Naturally adapted to this region, to severe droughts and heat, native Garry oak trees serve as a vital nature-based solution to counteract flood risks and urban heat island effect, which particularly affects vulnerable populations. Plant ecologist and Indigenous scholar Robin Wall Kimmerer, in her book Braiding Sweetgrass, advocates for weaving together Indigenous wisdom and scientific knowledge to help mend the relationship between humans and the natural world. The City OCP Vision 2050 Reconciliation Actions, Understanding Indigenous Land and Water Management states that the City will, quote, seek to understand the practices that have supported ecosystem conservation for millennia and work collaboratively to braid Indigenous knowledge systems with Western science in preserving and enhancing natural assets and advancing a climate-forward city, end quote. The draft OCP bylaws, legislation, and process undermine this objective. The OCP's new land use class scheme was determined without a citywide biodiversity assessment on private land, presenting an obstacle to stewardship opportunities. Development permit areas for all housing includes requirements for protecting the natural environment, its ecosystem, biological diversity. However, the general urban design guidelines for the urban forest were crafted in the absence of an Indigenous land manager, licensed ecologists, biologists, and urban foresters. The tree protection bylaw has not been updated since Bill 44 and other provincially mandated targets and cannot provide physical protection for existing trees within a proposed building envelope. We are encouraged by that the canopy has grown by 100 soccer fields over 10 years, while adding more than 8,000 net new homes, almost entirely multifamily buildings. However, the rate of growth dropped by 50% in the last 4 years, meaning 23 hectares short of the previous 4 years' urban canopy growth rate. Therefore, we propose the following urban forest policy recommendations. Adopt a citywide Garry oak species detection tool as part of the ongoing urban forest remote sensing updates. Create an urban forest technical advisory group with representation from Indigenous knowledge systems, environmental orgs, ecologists, biologists, and urban forestry experts to analyze government and third-party data, such as urban forest remote sensing, and report these recommendations to parks and urban forestry. The OCP reduced landscape area, i.e. plantable space minimums, from 9% to 6% on every lot, development lot. Plantable space is a leading indicator of canopy change. Therefore, please increase the landscape area or the plantable space minimums in priority growth and residential infill zoning areas from 6 to 9%. A 6-meter backyard setback provides limited opportunity to retain existing large trees, and the minimum required trees per lot to plant replacements is excessively difficult to achieve when applying spacing requirements from the tree protection bylaw. Therefore, increase all setbacks by a minimum of 2 meters for landscape plantable space, i.e. the soil area to plant a large species of tree as opposed to a medium-sized tree in the priority growth and residential infill zoning areas. And finally, update Section 4 applied guidelines from intact Garry oak ecosystems to and modified Garry oak ecosystems and Garry oak trees. Thank you very much.